Well, good morning. Thank y'all all for coming to my defense today. Um, there are handouts in the back if y'all want handouts. I just wanted to thank my committee, Doctors Bill Weeks, Penny Weeks, and Bailey Norwood, and then my unofficial doctoral committee of Samantha Blackwell, Lauren Klein, and Audrey King, as they've helped me tremendously through this process. So today we're going to be talking about students' perspectives on strategies to combat food insecurity on campus. So to start this off, we're kind of going to think about the types of students that might be on college campus. When I think of a traditional college student, I typically think of somebody who is financially dependent on their parents. They started college right after they graduated high school, graduated in May, took the summer off, began in August. Then if they do work during school, it's only part-time, or they don't work at all, and then they typically don't have any dependents. However, there's a new type of college student on scene. These students may have been on a school lunch program through kindergarten to 12th grade. A lot of them are financially independent. They also, the average age is 26. They delayed their college enrollment. They found that students may not start college until they're 21, and several of them may even have children. So we all know there are a lot of ways to get support for higher education. In 2017, over $122 billion was invested in student aid alone. This was done in a variety of ways. You have private and publicly funded scholarships. You can receive loans from the government. $27 billion were invested in Pell Grants in 2017, and then also federal work studies are available. This is a lot of taxpayer dollars that's invested in our higher education. Now, sometimes we can't make ends meet, and that brings up the issue of food insecurity. Food insecurity is when you don't have adequate access to nutritious food. To help deal with food insecurity, you have a variety of ways to do that. One way is SNAP, also known as the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. This program began in the early 1900s as a commodity surplus program. Then it evolved into the food stamps program, where individuals were able to buy food stamps at a discounted price to then receive products at grocery stores. In 2008, it became known as SNAP, and recipients now get a debit card of sorts that has their benefits on them, and so you just swipe that at a grocery store just like a regular credit card. In addition to SNAP, you also have WIC. This is specifically for women, infants, and children, women who are pregnant or postpartum, and then up to children up to the age of 5. You can receive this in addition to SNAP, and it kind of works the same way with a debit card, so to speak, that you can use at grocery stores. Once children start school, we have the National School Lunch and Breakfast programs. These provide meals at free or reduced cost for students from kindergarten all the way to 12th grade. So these are a lot of ways that are funded by the government to help food insecurity. We also have something called the Charitable Food Emergency System. This starts with food banks. A food bank is a warehouse of sorts that also distributes products to other parts of this the charitable emergency system. The food banks are privately and federally funded. The local branch of the charitable emergency food system is our Daily Bread Food and Resource Center. This is a food pantry. A food pantry receives products from food banks as well as private donations from the communities they're located in. This is the branch of the system that distributes these products directly to those in need. Another branch or aspect of this charitable emergency system is a soup kitchen. One around this area is the Iron Gate in Tulsa. Soup kitchens, community shelters, and things like that also receive products from the food banks and are all part of this charitable food emergency system. So there's a lot of ways that students could receive help, but they may not know about these resources or they may not be utilizing them. And also, while there are a lot of ways to get financial aid, this financial aid may not meet every single cost associated with college. It's been found that when college students are food insecure, they are unable to perform well academically. They're so focused on, where's my next meal going to come from? Do I need to pick up that extra shift at work so I can have the extra money to buy food? And so once they aren't able to focus properly on their studies, this also leads to issues of retention and degree completion, which goes to, the broad scale of a university, not just an individual student, because we all want everybody to graduate, right? And when students aren't graduating or they're not performing to the best of their abilities or dropping out, this puts all of that taxpayer money at risk. So that leads us to the conceptual framework of the study, talking about needs. This is Maslow's hierarchy of needs. There are physiological needs, safety needs, love and belonging, esteem, and self-actualization. Physiological needs are the basis of all needs in our lives. Food is a physiological need, and when these needs are not being met, you can't properly focus on anything else in your life. So when somebody is not accessing food like they should be able to, they can't focus on their school, they can't focus on building the relationships and fulfilling their duties that they're supposed to in life. So if we're not meeting that need, they won't be able to do everything else that they're supposed to. There have been at least 59 studies that have been reviewed that found a range of 9% to over 50% of food insecurity on college campuses across the United States. The average on campuses has been about 32.9% of food insecurity among college students. There have been several risk factors identified by multiple studies that are predictors of food insecurity among students. If you remember, this also describes this new type of student that's enrolling in college. They come from a lower socioeconomic status. They experienced food insecurity in the past, so they were the students who were on these meal programs through elementary, middle, and high school. They're a first-generation college student. They may not know all the costs that are truly associated with college or how to navigate all the ins and outs of applying for these different things. They have a child at home or multiple children, and they could have been in the foster care system as well. So there was a food security study done in 2018 here at Oklahoma State, and that study found that 42% of the participants were food insecure. So my goal or purpose in this study was to look at students' knowledge and awareness of local food programs, and then also what they would do if they were food insecure. We did this by assessing their food security status. We asked them what they thought would be effective of various strategies of what they could do, what they would do themselves if they were food insecure, and then also asking about local food assistance programs. So my instrument included questions on demographics. We used the 6-item USDA food security survey. We asked them if they were aware what they knew about SNAP, if they could receive it as a college student, if they knew if there was a local community food pantry, once again, what they thought would be effective, and then also their potential behaviors. So the target population was the undergraduate student body here at Oklahoma State University. My sample size needed was 377 participants, which was calculated by the Qualtrics sample size calculator, which is based off Kretschke and Morgan's sample size formula. Students were able to scan a QR code, which you can see in the bottom left-hand side. You can do that with your phone. It takes you to the survey in Qualtrics. Once they completed it, they signed a receipt and received $5. I collected data on 3 different days, one day in the lobby of Edmond Lowe Library, one day in the lobby of Agricultural Hall, and then one day in the Student Union. I had enough money for 400 respondents. The funding for this incentive was provided by the Agricultural Leadership Program and the Department of Agricultural Economics. Oh, and once I finished cleaning my data, I ended up with 391 respondents in this survey. So just a little bit about the demographics. A majority of my respondents were white, which is comparable to what is provided by the Institutional Research Board. The majority of the students here are white. I had slightly more females participate, but that's also representative of the student body. There's a few more females than males. It was fairly evenly distributed across the classification. You know, sophomores, we all know about sophomore slump. We've all experienced it at some point, so, you know, that could explain why there's not as many sophomores. It was fairly distributed through the colleges across campus. Kasner was overrepresented just a little bit, and that could be that we were in the lobby of Ag Hall, and then we also had Ag Lead students helping recruit, but we compared their answers to other students, and there was no difference. Housing, 42% said they lived on campus, and that could be that they lived in a residence hall or in Greek housing. And then the rest of the students do live off campus, which could be alone with roommates, family, friends, etc. Employment. This is kind of important because we are talking about SNAP. So 20% of students said they didn't work, 46% said they worked less than 20 hours a week, and 34% said they worked 20 hours or more a week. So some of these students are enrolled full-time and also working full-time. And then also, once again, a majority of the students said that they were full-time students, which is a majority of students here at Oklahoma State. So Objective 1 was all about food security. If you flip to the back of your package, you'll see the 6 questions that we use to determine food security status. That's provided by the USDA. And so affirmatives is, if they answered, it's typically the first answer choice on each question. If they indicated that, then that's an affirmative answer. About 50% are food secure, so they only answered yes to one question or less. However, you still have the rest of these students, which is about 48%, that are food insecure or at risk of food insecurity. That's a big problem if half of the students are struggling with this. Objective 2 is we ask them, what do you think is effective? How would you want to see food insecurity being dealt with? So you can see that accepting a $50 gift card, attending an event with free food, or finding a meal in the community at a church or something like that, or using donated dining dollars would all be very effective way, they thought would be an effective way to deal with food insecurity. You also see that they think that it would be, a good idea to accept food from a pantry. The thing is about the top 4 choices, those are all anonymous ways to get help. They don't have to, identify themselves or specifically turn anything in to get that help. They even thought that applying for SNAP would be fairly effective. But when we look at Objective 3, which is all about what would you do if you yourself were food insecure, you can see that the top are kind of similar. Once again, the anonymous aid sources, accepting a gift card or attending a free event, asking money from family or friends. Those are all what they would do would be effective. But only half of the students said that they would apply for SNAP or get food from a pantry. So while at least 76% thought this was effective, they wouldn't do it. That's a big problem if they're not going to utilize these resources that are already there. And then finally, we asked just about what they knew about different stuff. So we asked them, can college students get SNAP? Less than half of the students knew that they could receive SNAP as a college student if they met eligibility requirements. And out of those that participated in this study, only 2% currently receive SNAP benefits. We also asked if they were aware of a local community food pantry, which is Our Daily Bread. Less than half of the students knew that this was a resource in the community. Of those that said yes, only 15% have actually utilized this food pantry, and this was just in the course of a semester that we asked them. So then the conclusions. Food insecurity is a major problem here at Oklahoma State University. Half of the participants have experienced food insecurity, and this is similar to what was found in 2018. Students that lived off campus were found to experience food insecurity at a higher rate. However, in 2018, they didn't find any relationship between that at all. And then food insecurity was found to not have a relationship between classification and gender. So no matter if they were a freshman or a senior, male or female, they would experience food insecurity at the same rate. Students believe that accepting aid from anonymous sources would be extremely effective in fighting food insecurity. And these anonymous sources, once again, are accepting money or free gift cards or just seeking out a free meal across campus or in the community. They also thought that using a federal aid food program, which is SNAP or WIC, or going to a food pantry such as Our Daily Bread would be effective, but as Objective 3 talks about, they didn't think that it would be something they would do. Once again, this whole idea of anonymous aid is really what these students are interested in engaging in. But they were less interested in receiving aid from formal sources. Formal sources are are SNAP and food pantries and WIC, and that's because you have to provide identification and documentation. And there's also a stigma that's associated with these sources, and that could also be keeping these students from participating. And then students were unaware that they can receive benefits from SNAP. In this study alone, 25% of the students would qualify to receive SNAP based off the fact that they're enrolled full-time and work at least 20 hours a week. But only 2% actually receive SNAP right now. They were also generally unaware that Our Daily Bread is a resource in this community. Upperclassmen were found to be more aware, but that could simply be because they've been in Stillwater longer than underclassmen. They've seen signs or they've gotten involved. So Maslow describes food as a basic need. If this need is not being met, then we know that students aren't performing academically, they are dropping out or not graduating, and that's placing all of this taxpayer money at risk. And that's also students aren't fulfilling what they want to do. They're not going to college, they're not finishing. There are many different ways to help meet this need of food, such as SNAP, going to a food pantry, somehow campus is reaching out and helping these students. However, the stigma associated with SNAP and with food pantries may be keeping these students from utilizing these sources. Also, SNAP and WIC are simply just another form of financial aid. We fill out the FAFSA, we accept loans, we accept grants, and so maybe universities could work to help students apply for these resources to help them understand more and find the way to do so. One way that some colleges are doing this is to standardize applying for SNAP and WIC and finding out about food pantries is through a centralized office that coordinates all of these application processes. So an office would house housing applications, maybe on campus and to help places in the community, Veterans Affairs, disability resources, and as well as financial aid and having somebody to help navigate the process of applying for SNAP. And this would help reduce the stigma of receiving these benefits. So if you would like to see what the students saw as they took my questionnaire, you can take your phones, simply point it at this QR code, and it'll take you to my instrument that I used to collect the data for this study. And now I'll entertain any questions.
What did you do for the students that didn't have smartphones?
We had iPads available, and so we just showed them how to do it, and they were able to use our iPads.
So, Kami, you were talking about how there's the stigma associated with food insecurity and like using the SNAP benefits and things like that. And it's really interesting that that's still prevalent since there's been so much research and stuff done about food insecurity on college campuses. So if you were to work at a university, how would you work on filling that gap so students know that that stigma doesn't have to be associated with needing that additional help?
I think just honestly, education is such a big component. Like we saw, a lot of students don't know about it in general, but also, I accepted loans, I accepted scholarships, and so I think just truly helping students understand, there is no shame in asking for help when you need it, and so just working with them and just providing those opportunities to apply for it, just like anything else, not making it a special thing, but just this is part of college, and it's okay to ask for help from these resources. Dr. Cherry?
So you pointed out that this food insecurity is related to the physiological level of Maslow's. At what level or levels is a college education?
I can go back to it. There's different things that it talks about in this, and I would think that education, a lot of jobs now require some sort of college degree, and employment falls into, employment kind of falls into safety. People want to know that they have a job, and having that college degree can fit into that. But then also, I think too, you also have the love and belonging, which talks about building a group. And some of the closest friends I have, and you find that at college too. And so I think education kind of fits honestly into safety, and then love and belonging, and also esteem. You have that, pride in yourself of I've accomplished this and I have this to, help move me through life.
I agree. I think that makes a lot of sense, and there's probably some implications there as you look at your conclusions and how they apply to college students and adding to the importance of the study you did.
Thank you. Lauren or Catherine, whoever wants to go first.
What was the most surprising finding from your study that you weren't anticipating?
Honestly, that like a lot of students didn't know that Our Daily Bread was here and that they couldn't apply for SNAP. I feel like Our Daily Bread does have a good relationship with the campus and they do talk about it, but just the fact that almost half of the students didn't know it was there.
Did you look at that result in relation to where the students live, comparing, for instance, the Greek students to non-Greeks?
I don't think, off the top of my head, I don't think so. It was more just classification and gender, and so that the upperclassmen knew, and so that's just, like I said, possibly because they've been in the community longer.
But you didn't separate out Greek, you did on campus?
Yeah, I just did
Okay.
on campus
Okay,
as a
all right.
total.
I'd be interested to see that because the Greek community is so involved in service projects. You
Right.
definitely have a higher level of awareness.
Yes, sir.
Interesting.
Catherine?
I was going to say, like, similar to how Amber asked the question of what do you do on the college level as a university to combat the problem? Do you think to fix it, it's more prevalent to start, like, with the freshmen, like the first year success centers, start with that, getting them enrolled, or to address the older population of college students?
I don't know if you could target specifically one because each student is so different. But I mean, talking about it when students do transfer in or are starting their college career, having it a part of orientation classes and sessions and things like that. And then it just becomes almost an integral part of applying for college is, if you're a first generation college student or even if you're just financially independent, your parents are like, we can't help you pay for college. You include that as just part of the process as applying for college and financial aid.
That makes a lot of sense.
You'd hope, Catherine, if students in general know about the pantry, they're the ones that might know that they've got a friend or an acquaintance that says, man, I'm really having trouble, and they would refer them to the pantry and say, hey, there's this place you can go and get food.
Katie?
You talked a little bit about stigma, and stigma I would say is like a subjective measurement of whether or not I think that it's good or beneficial, not beneficial so much, but like, are people going to look down on me if I go? And so my question is, you objectively ask them, like, have you needed food or have you needed this, but did you ask them about their perception of the stigma of using programs of like WIC and that? I wonder if it would be interesting to see where people's perceptions of food, of WIC and SNAP come from, and where if they know people that use it and what those people are doing, because I wonder if that plays into a little bit of that stigma of, I might be food insecure, but I'm not that insecure that I need SNAP or WIC or something to that effect. So that might be an interesting, as you move on, look at the where do they get the stigma of, because someone that has foster kids are given WIC to be able to supply for their children, and so if someone knows someone that has foster kids, they might say, well, I don't feel like I'm in that much of need, so I don't want to take
The
from
literature
them.
does show, and some of the studies that conducted focus groups are just more so just one-on-one interviews, that a lot of students would be like, well, I don't have enough money for food, but like there are people in more need than I am. But just also the stigma of it's embarrassing to, almost like I need.
Yeah.
Some people see it as a handout.
Yeah.
But that would be more research.
It'd be an interesting level to add to that. Yeah, cool.
Lauren?
So you found too that students prefer these anonymous sources. What recommendations would you make to the university when they're providing free meals on campus?
So
is pizza always the best?
I mean,
If
if you
food security is
think about it, if
nutrition?
somebody is truly seeking out a meal on campus and they are in such desperate need, they could be eating 4 or 5 meals a week at a free event, and that could mean pizza 5 times a week or chicken fingers 5 times a week. And don't get me wrong, we all love pizza, we all love chicken fingers, but if that's where they're getting their main source of nutrition, then, which I mean, I'm not a nutrition person, and that could be something for somebody else too, but that could be setting students up for health problems, which then leads to more long life problems in health. So
we were actually at a conference at the beginning of February, in Michigan State does a program now where they give like advisors and faculty members these meal cards, like $10 meal cards. So if a student comes in and says, I haven't eaten all day, they're like, here, go get something, which kind of helps, because we have so many good eating options on campus that maybe they won't have to eat the chicken tenders or the pizza every time.
And that kind of falls into the option that I asked about, like donated campus dining dollars, because some students either blow through it really fast, because I don't know the breakdown of all how much money they get, but instead of going and buying, we all know stuff and like 20 something is overpriced, and so instead of buying that and donating it, giving them the option, creating maybe a system where they could donate that, and then it can be distributed to students in need, which is some students or universities have started doing that.
Speaking of that, what's your perspective? I know in your literature review you studied some of the places that host like an on-campus food pantry. What is your perspective on that? Do you think it's helpful?
A lot of colleges and universities have established, there were roughly around 700 or more that are registered with what's known as the College and University Food Bank Alliance, so there could be even more. And it is, a quick way to help students, and to think, food pantries are part of that emergency food system, so it may not be sustainable long term, but there's also been no research done on how effective food pantries truly are on campus. And so if that, there's a study done, or a review of literature done, that looked at about 59 different studies, and of those studies that have established food pantries, there's been no research done on how effective it is long term. And so that's, one way to kind of address food pantries. Any other questions?
Why were you interested in this topic?
Well, we are in the food college, and being in that, and food stamps or SNAP started as a way to help farmers and to also help people in need. In 2018, the USDA, through the Farm Bill, spent about $25 million on food assistance programs.
How much?
25 billion. Sorry. But also, I am a college student. This is close to home, and we want, if we're going to encourage these students to attend college and to do that, then we want to also help them succeed to the best of their ability. And that's a lot of money at risk. We have time for maybe one or two more questions.
I don't know if it's really a question that you can answer, but I think I'm curious with the service that Dr. Terry was talking about, if people in these groups like Greek community or clubs on campus are going and serving at Our Daily Bread, then that kind of makes students
Less likely to go
themselves, because they feel like they are on one side and they can't be on the
Both
other
sides.
side as
Yeah.
well. And same for the on-campus food pantries and things like that.
Well,
So,
And I think that all goes back to the stigma, like where did their stigma come from, of why do they think it's not okay to get help? You're getting help, you're applying for scholarships, you're applying for financial aid, and I think your analogy of comparing the two that way, I think that that's a really good step in the right direction to allow students to understand that this is not a handout, this is not, like, these services are provided because you are doing what you're doing. And I think it's really good, time and place with all the mental health issues and all of the, people dropping out because they need to work and they feel like they have to work in order to, physiologically survive. I think that that's a really good point of where is this stigma coming from, and why do we feel that it's not okay to accept this type of help, but we can get help in other ways.
What college student says, hey, I don't need that Pell Grant, I'm fine.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. I don't want your scholarship, Yeah, like,
think it goes back to kind of what you said though, Katie, how they're like, well, I may be insecure, but there's probably someone worse, because like I think of my community growing up, and like, yeah, there were times that my family really struggled, but I know that my classmates were struggling more. And so it was like, we never asked for that additional help because we knew that someone else needed it more. And so I think it would be interesting to see where their like childhood experiences brought them in during their college experiences as well.
Time for one more question.
Well, can you say anything about their previous background? Did you ask about?
We did ask if students had received SNAP, and it wasn't a great, or not SNAP, but we did ask if they received SNAP, and then also if they had been on, if they had received free or reduced lunch. And there were, oh gosh, off the top of my head, maybe around 20%. I don't know, Bill would have it. Dr. Day, did you have a question?
I did. So one of the things I think our study really highlighted was, I don't know that we have a resource problem at the institution as much as we have a knowledge problem. So we have a lot of these programs, but people don't know about them. Students don't know about them. And so what advice would you give to help everybody know that this is going on?
I mean, I didn't, specifically study like how to do that, but based off like what I've read in the literature and then just, seeing it, education is such a big thing, and so maybe inviting our Daily Bread to all these orientation sessions and orientation classes, but also having people maybe who are part of the SNAP application process who work in that coming as well. And then one way that one of the studies, it's GAO report, they looked at a lot of different college campuses, and they are creating this centralized office, and so it's like it would be in the student union, and so and they're assigning caseworkers almost, and so they're just helping do that, and then you just standardize it as a way of just applying for more financial aid. And so, I mean, education, and then, helping faculty understand, and if you had, I'm not saying to create the office, but like if you had an office, faculty would be able to say, oh, well, there's this office that can also help you with counseling or food insecurity and housing or finding a job even.
A one-stop shop. Sort of.
Yep.
I wonder if the convenience of having it on campus would make a difference, though. Like, because our Daily Bread does their college night, I wonder if there was an opportunity for them to be able to bring college night to the college, and then the students, because the convenience-wise, some students don't drive, so riding the bus and navigating the bus system actually past the borders of the university.
Right. Then you have to factor in, space, time, who's going to do it, and so there's...
And the convenience of it. I mean, we all shop at the place that's closest to our house because it's the most convenient. It might not be the best, financially, but it's whatever's most convenience is key in our society. So,
last question, Lauren.
With the 2% of students that said that they had or were currently receiving SNAP benefits, did you look at the ethnic breakdown of that? Because I wonder how much of that ties into stigma as far as what is perceived to be those who are eligible for SNAP and then are predominantly white university.
I'm sure I did at some point. Do I have a table of it right now? No. But
it's just a thought
yeah.
that kind of jumped in my head listening. Something to think about.
Okay.
Cami, before everybody leaves, I just want to say that, I always agree to be on a committee with Bill and Penny on it because their students always do exceptional work. But this was especially good. You put together from scratch a really good survey. You implemented it well. You analyzed the data very well, and you wrote just an excellent thesis.
Well, thank you, Dr. Nolan.